We welcome you today to Conversations and Coffee with this beautiful day of sun on the first day of December. Wow. I'm Ellen O'Shaughnessy, coordinator of the program here at the Priscilla Tyson Cultural Arts Center. We are delighted to have with us today our guest artists and main gallery exhibitors, Shelley Baird, mixed media and installation artist, whose show is entitled Best Served Cold. It's exciting to have you lead us to where you're going to take us in that title. And Anita Dawson, painter, whose show is entitled Memento, Time and Place. We're surrounded by Shelley and Anita's wonderful exhibit. Shelley Baird is an archivist. By instinct, she shares. She collects and creates images to construct a visual vocabulary. She makes non-literal narratives and finds connections and catalysts that tell a story in time and place with people, objects, marks, and layers. What a story you tell us, Shelley, in this Best Served Cold. Your working habits and processes originate from your formal studies in printmaking, painting, drawing, photography, graphic design, and textiles. She shares that she's idea-driven, not process or materials-driven. Instead of a sketchbook, she keeps an idea book of words, concepts, titles, and newspaper headlines. She shares that she likes spontaneity and doesn't mind being taken in totally unexpected directions. Now, speaking of unexpected directions, Shelley has exhibited in Lincoln, Nebraska, Charleston, West Virginia, San Diego, California, Earlville, New York, Rochester, New York, Columbus, Coshocton, Zanesville, Ohio, and more. Wow. Looking forward to this.
She just gave half my speech.
It's a story. It's a wonderful story. And Anita Dawson, we just discovered, Anita, I had known this, but she confirmed it. Anita did a Conversations and Coffee about 20 years ago. Time flies. Tempus fugit, huh? Anita is a full-time painter and sculptor. She shares that her work is exhibited in the Midwest and Eastern United States and includes a solo show at the South Bend Museum of Art and Dublin, Ohio Arts Center. Research into imagery has taken her on numerous trips to Italy, Spain, France to study iconography. She served as a visiting artist and an art professor in Aix-en-Provence and Rome. Anita is professor emerita at the Columbus College of Art and Design, where she taught painting and drawing. Anita shares that she grew up in Florida, a place of beautiful flowers, huh? Yeah. An influence on your present work, earning degrees at the University of South Florida and the University of Florida. Isn't this going to be wonderful? We look forward to it. Bravo. John, I like that clap. Let's everybody follow John. Husband of Shelley. Yes. All right, take it away.
I appreciate y'all being here. You're my people, the people who care about art and support artists, and I appreciate it. I also want to thank the Cultural Arts Center, all the people who work here and make it such a wonderful place. Let me show you a little bit about what I'm up to. I want to do a real quick slideshow. I mean, we could talk about the art. Maybe we'll get to that. But I like to talk about where it comes from. This is my studio. It looks like a glorious mess, and it is. It is the size of a two-car garage in my backyard. And it is organized in some way that only I know. But I want to invite you to come do a studio visit if you'd like to. I have some business cards over there, and if you'd like to just email me sometime and say, hey, we'd like to just stop in and see what you're up to. It's always fun to have people stop by. I work 7 days a week, but only for about 3 or 4 hours. It's about as long as you can concentrate on something that intensely. A few influences. Brock has been one of my favorites for a long time. Of course, Matisse. I've been aware of this painting since I was a little kid, and I always thought it was the most beautiful painting I've ever seen. It still worked its magic for me. Bonnard. I learned a lot about color and his strange manipulation of space, looking at his work. Chardin. You can't be a still life painter and not like Chardin. I also, in just fairly recent years, the last 10 years or so, realized how much I love the Baroque painters, the Italian Baroque. Artemisia Gentileschi, for instance, and of course Caravaggio. The drama. This is where I realized that you can go really far with tonality. And one of the tricks that I learned from Caravaggio is that there is a center point in the middle of the composition from which everything else sort of explodes out. And so you'll notice in some of my work that they're very centered and iconic that way.
Look across and look at your work. At that very, focus that you just had?
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah. Yep. It's a great trick that the Baroque painters taught me.
So we gaze over there for a moment.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. The light.
My vacations are always working vacations, and that means going to museums, you know, and probably for a lot of you all too. But yeah, I mean, just looking, you know, you don't have to read books, you just look and you learn so much. So here's a contemporary artist who also uses high contrast, tonality, and a light from a low angle. She's a Philadelphia artist. This is a Dutch artist, Famke Heemstra. I love her witty, strange constructions, but you see the same drama that, you know, they were doing in the 16th century through tonality. This is a contemporary American artist. I believe he is still around, and he's from Oklahoma. Good art comes from all kinds of places. This is a contemporary landscape painter. Not so much a magic realist as some of the previous ones were, but I really love his extreme contrast and how very warm the light is. When I moved to this cold climate where the light is very chilly and cool, I'm not a north light fanatic, I realized that I had to really tint my paintings to the warm side. So I have yellow tinted drapes over all my north light. And other artists come see it and go, "You've covered up all your north light." Yes, I have, for good reason. Albert Pinkham Ryder. These are all people who are sort of outside the mainstream. They're edgy, they're strange, and they have their own kind of vision, sort of internal vision. Here's another contemporary artist, I believe she's in Oregon, who does the most glorious magical realism, which I think is sort of where I would place my work these days. And she also uses a lot of Italian motifs. This is, let's see, I had to write her name down, I always forget it, Remedios Varo, a Spanish artist. who was working during the early 20th century. She was with the Surrealists, but she's especially wonderful and strange. This is also a contemporary artist. This is Maria Tomasula, who teaches at Notre Dame, I believe. She shows in Chicago, and I'm a big fan of her work as well. Intensely real, dark, moody, high contrast, rich color. So this is one of my earlier works when I feel like everything started just sort of falling together. And I think it combines all the things that I love about painting, about picture making. This is another one. This one now belongs to a friend, so I could actually visit it. Some of them have gone away and I never see them again, but this one is fairly nearby. This is a contemporary one I just finished during the plague, which was a great working time for me. Not great in other ways, but for us artists, it was great. You know, you couldn't go anywhere. You might as well make art. So this one, I think, really kind of summarizes the slightly strange magic realist
Where do you start
thinking.
when you begin to create that?
Sometimes it starts with color. Like I just find I'm constantly going to places like estate sales searching for fabrics and objects, and sometimes I'll find a piece of fabric that's just the right color of blue, and the whole painting sort of starts from there. But a lot of times I'll just start pulling things off the shelves and put them on a table and look at them and sort of move them around a little bit. And I often surprise myself. I just sort of start putting things down and sit back and go, oh my gosh, you know, I like this. I think I'll paint this one. So it's pretty concrete. It's about the colors in front of me. It's about the objects, but it's also about the time of year. I do different paintings in the summer than I do in the winter. The light feels different, just the feel of everything around me, and it tends to engender different feelings in the paintings. I'm also influenced by scientific illustration and science ideas. That's where the assemblages come from, for the most part, and the 3D pieces. I feel that science is where truth is revealed, and especially when you get down to the quantum. I always forget that word, quantum level. I don't know if anyone's done any reading about that, but the nature of reality that they're starting to discover is mighty strange, which I love, which is really inspiring to me. So this is a piece that I did a while back, and I think science and scientific ideas, the nature of reality and beauty all fit together for me. Has to be beautiful. So this is one that is here in this show, Quantum Moon.
They are placed so beautifully here.
Yeah, I like the way they're lined up.
Yes.
Such a good space here.
Wonderful. At your opening, so many people would just go up
Really?
and gaze.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, they're strange, and you know they're fairly recent, and for me, they're still hard to talk about because I'm not quite sure where it's all coming from.
And everyone knows what we're saying here along.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, our 3D pieces. So this is a reliquary. This is St. Catherine of Siena's finger, and this stuff just thrills me. I am not a religious person, but I do understand when there is powerful meaning, and you know, you can feel it. There it is. And so there's a kind of iconic quality to reliquaries that I discovered in Italy and Spain and somewhat in France, which I like to apply to my constructions. This is a Joseph Cornell that I think kind of does the same things. Arthur Dove. This is a contemporary artist, an English artist. This is one of mine, a fairly early assemblage. I had so much fun doing it. That's when I really discovered that I did want to get into 3D work, and it satisfies something. This is another fairly early assemblage of mine, trying to get the painting to move out into 3D a little bit. Another one of mine. This one also comes from scientific illustration. This is one of mine, and just appreciating those beautiful bird illustrations from the 19th century. You can see this is one of mine from earlier, 10 years ago or more. But you can see where that centered quality is really in play here.
And the decision to put the pear over to the right,
Yeah,
the balance,
yeah.
did that surprise you?
It seemed like it needed it. I think of these as landscapes. All of the still lifes are also landscapes, and I always imagine walking through, and I just felt that there needed to be something to take you over into that space over on the right and toward the back.
You have a gift for arranging.
Thank you. I learned that from Degas. This is a painting by a friend of mine, Hal Redcliffe, who lives in Boston. And he taught me a lot. He used to teach with me at CCAD. And he was one of the first people to really, teach me some of the secrets of painting. But I like this one especially because the tie is clearly a river, running through the pink foothills of the shirt. And here's a Matisse that looks very landscape-like to me. And then here's one of mine. This is, just about at the end here, this is a cake I taught in Rome. I was so lucky to take CCAD students for semesters in Rome. And I had an apartment, and on the weekends when I wasn't busy, I would go to a bakery and buy a still life object. So it's very, if I painted fast enough, my roommate ate and I could eat it. But it was very kind of makeshift. You can see it's just sitting on a corner table there, and the Wi-Fi thing in the background. But this still life became this painting. And I had to bring it home where I could really reassemble things and finish the painting. Here's another still life from in the studio. And I'll show you real quickly the painting that came from it. So you can see in the background is a printout of a landscape, the sky that I liked quite a lot. So I just pinned it to the back and faked it. So some of this stuff is sort of faked and some of it is direct observation. So there it is. And that's it. So, thank you.
Going over for a moment and choosing one of your works here and calling forth some thoughts, questions.
I'll be glad to. I would not even know where to start to choose something, but if anyone had any comments or questions, I'd be glad to talk about it.
Yeah, question, nice and loud.
Okay.
Do you set up? I saw your studio, which might be chaos, but do you set up these still lifes in your studio?
Yes. Absolutely.
Very, very.
Very much so. I really, yeah, yeah, I do. And as you can see, I depart from this, the setup a lot. But I've got to have something to refer to. Just,
Okay, so like these natural animals, like a parrot or squirrel.
Yeah.
Yeah, pheasant or whatever. Do you, I mean, what do you use?
well, sometimes I have to resort to Google, you know, and, you know. But I will admit that I ordered a taxidermied parakeet from Etsy last summer, and it's shown up in several paintings lately. My daughter had a rabbit, a little black and white rabbit, that made me really fall in love with rabbits. And so I took a lot of pictures of Robert. And now and then I will pick out some of the photographs and use those to, you know, fill in the gap. There's Robert there with the little moon phases above him. But yeah, the one, for instance, with all the birds, I had a couple of models of birds, none of which were entirely satisfactory, and some of them were photographs. So that one took a long time, because trying to put it all together, you know, with the right color and value for everything, took a little while. Any other questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm just wondering, this is just a silly question. Because you use fruits and flowers,
Yeah.
do you have to keep putting them in the refrigerator fast?
You know, I have gotten pretty good at painting those things in really fast. But I will say that a couple of years ago, I painted a watermelon cut in half, and I just painted as fast as I could, and by the end, it was basically a bowl of mold. So, you know, but I had the essence of it, so that was okay. But yeah, it's tricky making those things work, but that's why the studio is so cluttered, because there are lots of fake geraniums and, you know, other artificial things, plastic frogs.
Is this recent work, the pedestal work, and then did you go off the image, like, you know, like the rabbit there and the little man on top?
Mm-hmm.
Is this more recent,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah?
Yes, all of these 3D pieces are within the last 5 years or so. Yeah, they just sort of started happening. And I was saying earlier to someone that I still don't have a real good explanation for it, so I'm working on it. I don't know entirely where that's all coming from.
I would have a question.
Yeah,
I mean, before the watermelon goes bad,
sorry.
why don't you,
Talk into the microphone?
before the watermelon goes bad,
Yes.
why don't you take
Oh,
a
I did
picture
take
of
photographs,
it? And
yes.
like from different
Yes.
sides.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then you don't worry about the
Right.
melon.
Yeah, you're right. You know, the funny thing is,
Refrigerator.
I've learned, at least my own feeling is that still life painting is like shallow sculpture. That if you're just thinking about a flat picture, you're not going to get very far. And so I really just have to kind of look around the corners of things. But yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I have. I do that. Yeah. But somehow it still needs to be there. You know, sometimes I will just toss it out. But yes.
First of all, I just love your work. I think
Oh, thank
it's
you.
amazing. I was just wondering, and you might have said this before I came here, but is the symbolism in your work, is it personal to you, or are you using symbols like that are symbols that are common throughout
Yeah.
our history, or both?
Both. Yeah. I think both. And that's why I look at Italian art so much, and, you know, European art from especially, well, medieval times really, but I was going to say the Renaissance. You know, there's a whole code of meaning. Yeah.
And different
Yeah.
phases throughout.
Absolutely. I think there's a common language there, and I think, too, that there are multiple definitions, and so for someone, a frog might mean something. For someone else, it might be something else. And that's good. I want multiple definitions. If you're going to live with a work of art for 30 or 50 years, you don't want it to just mean the same thing all the time, you know.
We have things peeking out of the books sometimes, like the photographs and things like that.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I hope to surprise people, you know. I hope that there are more little discoveries the more you look at it. And I hope even that the meaning changes of the painting, that, it takes on different meanings depending on the mood you're in or, whatever. So, yeah, there's definitely an iconography. I've studied it, but I like to go beyond that as well.
Well, Anita Dawson, this was extraordinary.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, yeah. Shelley is coming forth to share her amazing talent, huh?
Now,
What a great
don't
team you
quite
make
know.
in this
I'm
exhibit. It really does come together as you
No.
come together, huh?
And I want to thank you all for coming as well today, and thank Cultural Arts Center, Priscilla Tyson Cultural
Want to
Arts
talk
Center.
into that
Oops,
microphone
sorry.
there?
And-
Great.
I'm not very tall. Can you see over? Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming today. I'm happy to be here and to share the gallery space with Anita and try and explain how did we get here today. So in 2005, I read that article in the Dispatch about a woman who killed a man because he ate a piece of cake that she wanted. And that confused me. And I pinned it up on my studio wall. My studio walls kind of function as a sketchbook for me. I put articles and works in progress and scraps I revisit. And I kept that article up for years because it bewildered me. And I often do that. Like, here's another article that I rescued from the Dispatch and made a screen and made a print. And at some point it will show up in my work. It hasn't quite yet. So I kept thinking about this and thinking about it, and I was scheduled to be in a workshop that I do every summer. I've done it for like 18 years or every spring. And I thought, I'm going to take 7 days and I'm going to investigate this food killing phenomenon. So I took my laptop with me, and I literally sat there for 7 days, didn't bring any art supplies, and I would type in things like killing over spinach, killing over ice cream, killing over cookies, and I found hundreds. And I do know that Google images or Google searches are forever, and mine could be kind of incriminating. But I persevered and struggled with how I was going to make this visual. I thought, like, okay, you could do a cookbook, you could do recipes, you could do Venn diagrams, you could do maps, you could draw some mugshots. But instead, I came to my senses and decided to strip it down to simple white napkins with parts of the story screen printed on them, just starkly. So I literally, for months, ordered every single white or off-white napkin between 11 and 17 inches that I could find on eBay. And as the napkins came in, I would make a screen, and then I would screen the imagery onto the napkin. Yeah, I'll tell you, Thermofax, easy, quick and dirty. And one day my daughter came over and she took one look at this table and went, oh, I'm so glad my boys are too young to read. But I persevered, did it anyway. And when I got to 100, I thought, good round number, you're done, enough already, even though people keep sending me years later articles that I might want to use, but the ship has sailed. Anyway, so I thought, great, so I've got 100 of these, and I'll find some venue, maybe they'll hang them, and I can have an opening, and I can have all the food from the 100 napkins at the opening, which I immediately knew was ridiculous, expensive. What if I give somebody food poisoning? And I hate to cook. So I just put them away for a while. But then, months later, I'm standing at the grocery store looking at the frozen food section, and I go, oh, no, I have to photograph all that food. And so then it really began. And I started buying and carrying in and cooking all this food. And it was a lot of parts where, I hate to say it was fun because the project is kind of serious, but one of my favorite activities is going to the thrift store. Anita, I probably have some stuff for you. Anyway, I would go to the thrift store and I bought a lot of dishes and I used a lot of my own. And when I was all done with the project, I donate them all back, but I saved a few just for, souvenirs. But it also enabled me to go to one of my other favorite places in town, Saraga International Market, because I knew that Kroger's would not have my ingredients that I needed for this Nigerian soup. It's called Owo soup. And the people there were great. I mean, there were people in the aisle, the African aisle, because they have different aisles from different countries, and they came over and go, "What are you making?" And they helped us find all the starches and the different things that we needed. And I also knew that I could find chicken feet at Saraga. And now I have my format all figured out. I was going to make 12 by 12 inch photos on a black background with the round circle, keep the circle as a unifying feature, have the food, and then pair it with these square or rectangular napkins with the stories printed on them. So, I was probably the only person in town that would wake up on a spring or summer day and go, "Oh, please let it be cloudy, dreary, and overcast so I could photograph." And if I were lucky, I would take a milk crate, put it on my driveway, throw a piece of black felt over it, put the food on it, shoot it with my iPhone, and go inside and clean it up in Photoshop. And so, now all the time I was doing this, I was kept thinking about the why of it. I mean, it bothered me for years and years and years. And so I went back to Sociology 101, and I thought about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and of course food is one of them. But I knew that none of my stories were about survival. Like you can get along just fine without a couple of chips or a couple of jelly beans. And I understood anger. Like if my sister stole my Halloween candy, I got angry, but I can promise you that she's totally fine. And I also learned that this is a universal phenomenon. I have one article from South Africa about a pocket of potatoes, and I thought maybe they were like baked potatoes or samosas. I had no idea what they were. So I emailed a friend of the Values as well, Rosalie Dace in Durban, and said, "What are pockets of potatoes?" And she said that that's what they called potatoes or produce that was bagged for market. So, and then I happened to also, the newspaper is a recurring theme, you might notice. I was reading the Dispatch one day, and I found an article about an Ohio State professor named Randolph Roth, and his area of expertise was homicides. So I wrote him thinking, maybe he can tell me why this happens. And he kindly wrote me back and said, "Hi, Shelley. That's an amazing story about the piece of cake and a great idea for an art installation. Thank you. I can't off the top of my head remember any other cases like that. Mostly it's where's my dinner or I hate the food you prepared." And there's definitely some of those you'll find on the wall. So I ordered this book, American Homicide. I ordered a couple other books. I called a friend who's a psychologist and said, "Help me, I don't understand what's going on." And she talked to me about snapping and overactive limbic systems. And then I saw an interview with the author Gillian Flynn about true crime, and she sort of described some of my feelings really clearly. She talked about the guilt of consuming someone else's misery. So I hope to feel absolved, since I do feel a little guilty. Time and all this thinking and reading and photographing, to me, it still just comes down to the proverbial straw and the camel's overburdened back. But these are crimes that confuse me, and they still evoke disbelief. So I'm going to lighten the tone here and read you a poem that my ghost writer, who seemed to have disappeared, wrote for me. You know the story about people would use an icicle as a weapon because it would melt, so there'd be no fingerprints. Well, these people use butter. And so the poem goes, I'll read it. They thought that butter would do just fine, that this would be the perfect crime, down his throat so smooth and slick, no air could pass that yellow brick. He gasped a bit, but not for long, and they were sure he'd sung his song. No evidence was left behind, the butter melted in due time. the physics of the plan they hatched, these two just couldn't really grasp. The coroner could not be fooled because at the morgue, the bodies cooled. The butter that had run away came back to tell the tale that day. So, like, how does a little girl who loves to draw end up taking pictures of food and screen printing on napkins? So when I was little, I did love to draw. Like, all my book reports were elaborately illustrated. I had cover pages. I defaced a lot of my parents' books with my own drawings and gibberish.
And this
I
is
never
you?
really minded
That was
getting
you?
sent.
That was you.
Oh, that was me.
Ah.
I really never minded getting sent to my room for some infraction. My parents seemed to never catch on because that's where my art supplies were. It's like, you're grounded, fine, I'll just draw and paint, I don't care. And that's not my childhood room. I'm actually in my 20s there, but some things never change except for my hair. But then at 17, I was off to Indiana University for college to be in the BFA program. And when I got there, they asked me what area I wanted to major in, and of course I said drawing, and so they go, well, that means you'll be in printmaking. And I went, okay, whatever that means. And I was just so happy to be there. I loved every minute of it. But it was really frustrating to me because it took more time to bevel the edge of a copper plate or prep a lithostone than to do the actual artwork. And we didn't use silk screens. The only inks in the lab were black and sepia, so I never learned anything about color, and I stayed there for 5 years, and the whole 5 years I was there. But then my senior year, I took a class with a photorealist painter named Larry Kaufman, and ironically, he only used black and white as well, so that saga goes on. So I started taking this class and thought, okay, I'm gonna be a photorealist painter, but then I instantly decided if I were to be a photorealist painter, I needed to plot out what I was going to paint, so I needed to take a photography class. And once I did that, I thought, why bother with the painting? I'm just going to be a photographer. So I graduated and went to Ohio State when I went back home to Columbus, and ended up, once they got their master's program, I got a master's in photo and cinema. And that's my sister, and you'll see her. I use all these photos for a lot of my screens, so she's a recurring theme also. But we use all kinds of cameras. We use plastic toy cameras. We use 4x5 view cameras. Of course, it was all analog in the darkroom. And of course, again, no color whatsoever, all black and white photos. So the fact that I use my phone now is really pretty amusing to me, and I would love to go in a time machine and tell, the 24-year-old me that you'll be using your phone, you'll go in the house, and you'll, print these on your computer. Like, that's pretty much fun. And another thing that I spent a lot of time on was doing handmade books, and I really liked it because I could use alternative processes and combine different media. Like this is an obsolete process called quick print, but I really like doing it. And now that I do a lot of textile work, I see this kind of as a precursor to what I'm now able to do with dyes on fabric with screens. So the art idols in my pantheon, that would take a whole hour to tell you all that, so I'm going to just tell you a few. But Rauschenberg was one of my earliest influence from afar. I have a lot of influences that I've actually been able to study with. And I really responded to his use of current events, screens, photos, and solvent transfers. So I thought, okay, academia, I'm going to be like Anita. I'm going to be an academic. I'm going to teach, and because I've been a TA, I've been an instructor at an OSU branch campus. I taught at a prep school. I taught some adult ed classes, but life intervened, and somehow I started to be asked to do graphic design work, even though I had 2-year-old twins and a 6-year-old at home. So my dining room table was my studio. I set up a baby gate to keep kids away from my X-Acto knives, and I started working and basically making collages, I would say. Then I started getting kind of big jobs from like nonprofits and schools and businesses. And one thing I knew is I knew nothing about graphic design. I knew nothing about the mechanics of it. So I went to CCAD on my own and just took illustration design classes. And I thought, well, while you're at it, you might as well take a color concept class now that you're, 30 or whatever. It's time you learn something. And I started thinking I should have told IU that I wanted to be a graphic design major. And this is a piece from a job I did for Columbus Landmarks Foundation with my friend and artist Jim Friedman way back when. Then this was a campaign for a shopping center. It's from a brochure, and I got to do newspaper ads and event publicity, and I even got to do a billboard. And I really liked being given an assignment to solve and pretty much approached my work like collages. So it began to look like I was going to have this freelance career in graphic design because I naively thought I could easily work from home and keep an eye on my kids at the same time. So I went to turn in an illustration at the printer one day, and I looked at it, fortunately, before it went to press, and one of my kids had signed it. So I just, that was my straw that broke that back, and I went, forget it, I'm done. I'm just going to do work for myself. So these kind of collages and things. And I formally and independently studied a wide range of media. Then I discovered my miracle tool. You asked about how I printed those. This is a thermofax machine, and this kind of dates it for you. It's a precursor to Xerox and all that. I'm sure some of us know what they are. And there's mine. She's called the secretary, unfortunately. But it's a really simple process and enables you to make screens really easy, but they're obsolete and it's hard to find parts and hardly anybody repairs them anymore. But the cool thing about it is the screens are small, they don't take up a lot of space, you don't reclaim them like a silk screen, so you can just use them over and over again in perpetuity, and mine have become part of my vocabulary, my visual vocabulary, that is. And you can use all kinds of substrates and all kinds of media to make your prints. This happens to be thickened dye on fabric. And then you can progress and use a lot of screens on the same substrate. And that's just a finished piece that you saw the beginnings of. That's how that went, with a lot of thickened dye, and I painted and lots more screens. So if I'd had that when I was in college at thermofax, I might have stayed a printmaker. But it enabled me to, again, mix media, do a lot of different things. And I discovered the magic of dye and fabric. And the thing about photography that I loved the most was putting the paper in the developer tray and watching the image emerge. Well, to me, rinsing a piece of fabric, rinsing the dyes off of it's the same, because you really don't know what you're going to see, and it's really magical when you rinse it off. So I look at a lot of different artists, painting, photography, and textile art. And Joan Snyder is somebody whose sensibility speaks in the same language to me as a lot of textile work, and often just literally using narrative. But I really like this. This is a picture of her making a piece of hers called Resurrection from 1973 about violence against women based on newspaper articles that you see on the wall. And this is my rip-off of Andy Warhol. This is my mom's high school graduation picture. But again, I really like Warhol because he did use newspaper articles and current events in his work. And so here I am in my home, also known as my studio, and I like studio visits too. For me, that's one of my favorite social outlets, so you're welcome. I like puzzles, and I like serving as my own art director, and this is me in my studio, also known as most of the rooms in my house. This was for a project called Textiles in a Tube, in which the piece had to fit into a 3-inch by 36-inch mailing tube. So I went back to my handmade book past and made an accordion folded book out of my screen imagery that was 26 feet long. Then they repeated the exhibit a couple years later, and so I took some fabric that I dyed, I screen printed it, and it turns out that 1,460 circles fit into the tube. So I owe the gallery director an apology. I mean, she's a saint. And I guess it was my karma, because I have total respect for installers now after installing all 200 pieces here. And it's funny, I did have some napkins, and a long time ago I did these things on my napkins. But it came in handy because I used it in this project that you see here today. And I try all kinds of media, so that's a little encaustic studio I have set up in my garage. And I did a big installation of 52 panels of letters, and I kind of like it because the translucency makes the things merge, so you think you can read my correspondence, but you can't. Then one day I had painters in my house, and I saw their drop cloths, and I asked if I could buy them from them. And they looked at me, and they go, "Lady, you can have them." And so I did a series of 11 panels called The Importance of Scars. And here's just 2 little details from it. And right now, I have 2 of them at the Rife in a really interesting exhibit called The Nexus of Art and Health. And it's multimedia, all kinds of different things. It's really worth going to see. I'm really happy that they included me in the show. There I am, talking. And here you see another example where I take all those bits and scraps of screens that I've made, and these are just adhered to a, 22 by, I don't know what, panel, not stitched. Some of the other work that I do is stitched. So here's my thing I really want to read. In addition to my walls as a sketchbook, I keep this idea ring, and I totally envy artists that have one media that they like and a way that they know they like to work. And had I been like that, this talk would have been a lot shorter. But as Ellen already said, I'm concept-driven and blah, blah about all that. And I've always been interested in nurture over nature, but I am interested in human nature. And so one way to talk about Best Served Cold is it originated from a newspaper article that sparked an idea. And while the article described details of a crime that occurred at a well-defined point in time, the idea and its execution have a longer history containing the tools I've acquired, the artists I admire, and the mentors I've had that influence the way I go about making art. So for sure, Judy Chicago's Dinner Party was somewhere, floating around in my brain when I was doing this project. It's from 1979, A Symbolic History of Women Throughout Civilization. And here's something I did 8 months of the quarantine. I did this piece called Fallen Idols when I was thinking a lot about the Me Too movement. And on the left, you see my process. Again, I screen printed and then attached them to a piece of felt. And it's really 96 inches long. It's kind of hard to see a vertical piece on a horizontal screen. And then vinyl yard signs is another of my alternative materials. And it started when I was working on a political campaign in 2008. I started collecting the signs, figuring out what I was going to do. And I made the First Amendment, and this is about 77 inches tall. And I also did the 9th and the 19th. And my most recent, possibly my last yard sign piece is, this is like 96 inches by 72 inches. That took the rest of COVID, I think, to complete. It's called VAWA, or the Violence Against Women Act. And here you can sort of see a detail so you get a sense of the scale and of the process. But I decided I've had enough reality for, I don't know, however many years I've had enough reality of, maybe 6 or 7. And so I'm going to escape reality and go back to some fantasy work, but you'll notice that I still use a newspaper article about those terrible nude hikers who caused an earthquake to occur. So I think the newspaper articles will continue on in my work. But thanks for listening.
Oh, Shelley, this is amazing.
Thank you.
Let's have you go over and stand before this amazing wall and engage a conversation and questions. Here's the, okay, here we go.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Oh, you do need rotate, yeah. Barb?
Yeah, okay, so silk screen all these, and you took pictures, you got all these, took pictures.
Yes.
And, okay, so you definitely get down into the dark side.
Yeah, I kind of, the dark side's been around for
Yeah, for a while, start of life. But this is definitely just, it's amazing that you found all this. How did you Did you Google these?
Oh, yeah, I literally sat there with the laptop because I didn't want to drag my art supplies to the workshop, you know, because it was a master class. You could do whatever you wanted. So I just sat there. I took a printer with me, a little printer, took my laptop, and honestly, every food that I typed in practically, I found some killing over. I would go literally killing over, over salad.
Made the silk screen.
So I just copied them, I printed them, then I used the Thermofax machine that you saw, and I might have used this other process called MyScreen that has a digital interface, which is good because the Thermofaxes are really expensive now and they're few and far between. But I just made Thermofax screens, and I really kept ordering those napkins, and you never knew how receptive the napkins were going to be to the inks because they were
Right.
weird, so I bought a lot of napkins.
I was curious how you made the print
That's
and then
how.
transferred
Then I
everything.
just I made the
and
Thermofax
then you
screen.
went outside with the black cloth or velvet cloth
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah,
and,
we
and cooked all these dishes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do cows, so he had to do some of this
You
guy
don't do
here. I don't eat cows and stuff, so John had to make the burgers and some of the other things for me.
Some of them are awful.
And he had to handle the chicken feet too. I directed him. I go, move that foot a little bit.
How
Move that
long
foot
did
over.
this take you? When did you start all this?
Well, I literally started thinking about it in '05. I think it was 2010 when I did the workshop. I
okay.
did all that research for months and months because I really was starting to
Yeah,
collect
you didn't
recipes.
keep track, really. Yeah.
And that went by the wayside. Then,
What was the one murder that got you?
oh, I think the butter got me the most. I mean, it started because I read the article, and it's really sad. And the woman in Columbus that did that. I mean, it was tragic, and she was obviously was tragic, a tragic person. But the butter one was kind of my. Oh, and I liked the one about the pot where. Well, I shouldn't say I liked it. Where the guy sold the guy what the guy thought was pot, but it was really rabbit food, so he got mad. That one's over there. I
Yeah,
thought
I
that
saw
was
that
kind of
over there.
odd.
That's awful.
Oh, well, you know that story.
What happened to that bird right in the middle of that wall over there? The multicolored bird. Did somebody eat that bird?
I think someone's cat ate the bird, so the person killed the person. Did they kill the cat or the person? I don't remember all these stories. Yeah, they killed okay, let me see. Yeah, they killed the cat that ate the bird. It was somebody's pet bird. Like the pet, he ordered me a bunch of those birds on Etsy also. Yeah, I'll give you one. Yeah, that was probably my
What was your
favorite.
favorite recipe? What was your favorite? You had to eat
Oh.
this stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, the owo soup was really fun to make. It's the Nigerian soup because you buy this starch and you end up with this blob of starch, and there are all kinds of strange, different, isn't there goat meat in it and stuff? We didn't eat it, but I think I tasted the starch.
Okay.
The neighbor's cat ended up in it. Anyway,
Wow.
yeah, and that pastrami sandwich cost me $14. We had to go to a deli to get that. That was annoying. Oh, and I like doing the one about the woman that was on social media too much. So I had to find, so I had to take one of my iPads or phones or whatever that was and set it up so there were all these social media options.
Why do people snap? I mean, they snap this just based on food. Just think of the people that snap, but people must really snap.
Yeah, I mean that's all I could come up with. I bought a ton of books, and I did a lot of research, and I called the shrink, and I asked the expert in town, the professor, and there's no answer. People just, snap.
If you remember the musical Chicago,
Yeah, but I might.
I didn't, she didn't, what is it, the song, she didn't do it or something, and why she snapped, and one of them snapped because her husband popped the gum in his mouth, so
Yeah.
I popped him. That's the line in the song.
That's the line. Well, and somebody killed someone because they were eating popcorn too loudly in the movie theater. You can understand that. Yeah, and there's a lot, there's Sweeney Todd, there's all that. In fact, I cut this article out of the paper. now I read the paper digitally, but anyway, there was a Mrs. Sweeney married Mr. Todd, which I thought was really weird. He'd have to have changed his name. I wouldn't want my name to be Shelley Sweeney Todd.
Doesn't this make you think about, like, you know, there's war in Ukraine, and
Yes.
there's, like, this annual that people have, or if you think it's a name? I mean, you know, like this, it's like on a low level.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I probably could have done a whole book on just potato chips and beer. I mean, there were literally, some of them there were a lot of. And really meaningless, you know, it's not like, oh, you drank my most expensive bottle of whatever you would drink. I don't know. Yeah, it's confusing. I still don't get it. Anybody in here understand this? Help me. Help me. What's ironic?
Most of these tragic incidents may have had nothing at all to do with food.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, for example, probably if some of the women that might have done it, the guy might have been beating what am I allowed to say on this cable TV? Beating the stuff out of her, and so it just was that, you know, what's that one little thing, that's the proverbial straw. I should have read that thing about... Are there any psychiatrists in the room? I tried a psychologist and she couldn't. Oh, for me? I need a psychiatrist because of my artwork. Anyway.
Oh.
Thanks, Barb.
Yeah. No, you have it's a great body of work.
Thank you.
Great body.
And Shelley, you call us through art to balance.
Pardon me?
You call us through art.
Oh, to balance it, yes.
Balance.
And the balance of caring for one another. As I've gone through those, I was just so struck at the impulsivity,
Yeah.
the rationality, and John just said the absurdity, and how you call us to the endorphins, the best part of our brain, in caring for one another and bringing a new meaning to food.
Yeah, I mean, when I first did it, I thought it might be interesting to have a wall just of all the food, and someone would go, oh, look at all the pretty food. Then they would go and read the napkins and go, oh. But I think it works. I like it this way. This is the fourth outing of this show, and it's really been interesting having different groups see it.
We're calling together recently around the table.
Right,
Thanksgiving.
I do have a
Yeah.
Thanksgiving one somewhere. I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody ate his leftover Thanksgiving dinner. And luckily at the thrift store, I found this great plastic Thanksgiving turkey plate and bought a TV dinner.
Well,
Yeah.
again, you call us to peace, and you call us to be around the table and caring for one another.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So, and Shelley, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Oh, and
listening.
Anita.